Right, this is obviously a video on the glove, officially the first, wearable from Octagon, but as I've said in previous videos on this, it actually doesn't serve a purpose. Again, the idea is to practice the development of mechanisms so that, when it comes to making, especially the plants, that we know how to do various things like hinges. This is a print-in-place hinge where the thumb piece, the piece that's actually moving my thumb right now, is actually printed at the same time as the rest of the thumb. The lower part of the thumb that is now moving, trying to keep only the bottom moving, that's printed separately from the thumb housing. But I just wanted to kind of give a bit of an update in terms of where I am. So I printed this to try to solve a few problems. But the main thing, I guess, if we look at the way this almost lines up perfectly, although at angles, and it digs into my wrist. But there's a number of different problems here that have kind of been stumping me for the last little while. I guess, looking at it, it looks like it's fairly comfortable, and I actually have a fair amount of slack and everything else, but the reality is it's not the case. After doing the thumb, I thought I'd have to redo the thumb because it's too congested in this area. But as I'm working with this, the main problem, if we look at the gap that is, just below where the ring is and where my finger is, that is a major problem, and it can't be solved because the wraparound mechanism that basically, that point of contact right there that I'm zooming in on, is too tight. So to solve that problem invokes a whole bunch of different other problems, especially with this curtain that kind of wraps around the bottom. So that's where I've been stumped in terms of holding things together. There's a few improvements in this area. First, obviously joining the wrist. I've got a video of my nephew with the wrist printed. If I look behind here, I can see that this curtain mechanism can actually fall all the way back. That's a very big, important design change that is going to free up some real estate in this congested area over here. The other one is I have to change the angles. So right now the thumb is angled, from this angle in the direction that I'm rotating the camera. Hopefully that doesn't appear as reverse, but it's 15 degrees off of perpendicular from the long axis of my hand, assuming that my index finger, my middle finger, sorry, is in straight line with my arm, which it seems like it is, but maybe in reality it isn't, or it doesn't need to be. Then after that, the first iteration of the glove, again from the video of my nephew, I've actually angled the fingers away from each other at 4 degrees. And this clearly wasn't enough, as you can see from the pinky finger. And if I take off the thumb and I push this all the way down so that this gap is a little bit more closed like it should be, that's a much more acceptable tolerance, but by no means enough. You could really see that my baby finger is, not aligned with its slot, and that's not going to work out very well. So that needs to be fixed. And the next step would be to double the angle again. So again, the fingers are now on this print, previous print separated by 4 degrees, and this one they're separated by 8 degrees. The idea would be to jack it up to 16, but upon further review I might even have to bring it up to 20. And if we look at the gap over here that's actually created, the idea of staggering these things here is a bad idea. So we need to solve the fact that the start of my middle finger is higher than the start of this one just by the angles alone. So that means 20 degrees may or may not be the right angle. I don't know if doing it by trial and error is the right way, but what it allows me to do is solve I guess the curtain problem. So right now what has to happen, and I've got some of this designed up, is basically this curtain here has to fall behind the curtain on this side. As I increase the angle, the curtains are going to run into each other. So the index finger's got to go behind to not compound the space problem in that connection joint. And my current thinking is to reduce the diameter of this finger and then this finger and then this finger on this side. But that involves a long series of design changes that I'm either willing or not willing to make. But you could see already what that alleviates is that's going to alleviate this problem. And also if we look down the fist, you could see that there is some space there, right? So reducing the diameter is a good example. It'll also alleviate, this congested between this first joint. I need to find a way to point, but between this first joint over here and here, that space is getting tight and it causes additional knock-on problems. And obviously if I increase the angles, my knuckles are going to hit together, and this whole idea of having these sliding mechanisms to close up this gap is going to start to become difficult. So again, what we want to do is have a much longer version of this with the exact same concept, stretching across here to here, which is then closed off by these angles, these square pieces over here on each of the knuckles. So if that comes in, this mechanism might turn into not the right mechanism, and then we might be forced back into having to do a curtain, kind of like a circular curtain like we have on the thumb. So one of these mechanisms over here. So that gives me, down the thumb. So, that'll allow me to make this length shorter. And as a consequence, I can actually I could twist the fingers into each other and not have the cover sliding portion touch each other, which is actually the limiting factor of the angles. So yeah, so lots of things to consider in the glove. Going back to this curtain mechanism here, I thought it was kind of cool, but it's not necessarily the most effective way to cover it. But I will have to use it in this area because once again, I don't have the space back here to actually do the same mechanism as this. So that'll be one overall improvement. And also, we need to solve the sealing problem over here. So this is a curtain and then another curtain to the tip of the thumb. That's easy enough. But then once we have this sliding mechanism that I was talking about, we still have to solve the outer cover of the joint, which by default I want to do it this way if I can. So that's a bit of an update on the glove in terms of the video. I think the last time I kind of showed an unwrapping of this. I've done a fair amount of design work to solve all of the problems that this iteration has brought to light. Very specifically, these ribbons coming into the palm, bumping into each other, them having to go, this one is going to be below this one, and this one has to be below that one. But again, at this end of the finger, I've got more space to work on, but this continues to be the limiting factor. What I might have to do is actually reduce, half of the diameter will stay as such. This quarter of the diameter, I might have to reduce it to pull this back so that this curtain goes behind the finger before this one does. And that'll be a really hacky job, because if I reduce the diameter of this, then that really has to come down quick, which in theory it can. But again, it's so much design work right now. The lessons learned from the glove are good enough to basically, allow other Octagon areas to move ahead. So I'm choosing to not move this ahead, but this is kind of my pet project. I would like to, not have to wait weeks or months in order to put another full glove together. But right now, that's kind of the path we're on. So anyways, just wanted to give some updates on some thoughts and some work that's gone on because it wasn't covered in the last one.